Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is doing okay today. It is 1:46 p.m. I would have started earlier, but I ensconced myself into trying to understand what was taking place in Britain. It's funny. It's like I started on one point, and there were three different stories that I was looking at, and I ended up merging those stories into kind of one story. So I'm going to try to go through it quickly. First, shout out to Jimmy Dore for coming on the show yesterday. Thank you very much, Jimmy. I am sorry for being a little interrupty. I know that's not a word, but you understand what I mean. During the show, it wasn't intentional. I think I was a little excited because Dore was on the show. I think that's what it was. But nevertheless, I still think it went well, and I absolutely appreciate Dore coming on the show and putting up with me badgering him. Putting up with me badgering him. Good looking out, man. You have no idea how much I appreciate it. Abby Martin will be on the show today at 5 p.m. Eastern. I checked with her yesterday. She is still a go for today. Fucking A. Abby Martin. That should be a damn good interview. Abby Martin has been able to go areas of Palestine, and not to mention she's been an avid vocal defendant of Palestinians. So that in and of itself is one of the reasons I respect her so much, and she can speak from first-hand experience. Also, Venezuela. Never been to Venezuela. I've been to Ecuador. That was the closest I've been to Venezuela. And her, again, first-hand experience. She was there. She's talked to the finance ministers. This would be a great interview. She has foreign policy experience, so this should be great. What I want to talk about today. So, we hopped across the pond yesterday talking about the Italian elections and what is taking place, the five-star movement, and what that means from the standpoint of Eurosceptics and the hand of the Eurosceptics in the, you can call it the Italian government, essentially strengthened by the president living up to what they've said has been taking place, meaning this kind of top-down power from Brussels and France and Germany into their political affairs. But let's go back to Britain. Chaos. Anger. Fucking around. Disaster. The sky is falling. I'm trying to explain the disaster that is taking place in the Theresa May government. But there are no words that you can really use to explain it. So you have to kind of explain it in parody and in song. Or in theater. That's how bad it is. There are no words. None. It is just that much of a clusterfuck that is taking place right now from the standpoint of Brexit. Let's take a look at this for a moment. I'm going to start here. I want you to see the Prime Minister questions that took place yesterday. This is kind of what piqued my interest in all of this. I pay attention to Brexit, but it's one of those things that I don't necessarily keep a watch on it constantly. There are things that come up where I'm like, whoa, what the hell did that mean? Well, this was one of those things where I said, whoa, what the hell is taking place right now based on this line of questioning? So this is PMQs. I love my PMQs. Let's...
Jeremy Corbyn! Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too attended the service last Sunday in memory of those that died at London Bridge, and I'd like to put on record my thanks to Southwark Cathedral and the Borough of Southwark for all the work they put into that. And of course, thanking all our emergency services that keep us safe all the year round. And yesterday I was able to give that in person to the Fire Brigades Union Conference in Brighton and thank them for the work that they do to keep us all safe. Last month, Mr. Speaker, the Brexit Secretary promised, and I quote, a detailed, ambitious and precise white paper on the government's negotiating position. Will it be published in advance of the EU withdrawal debate next week?
Prime Minister.
I say to the right honourable gentleman, first of all, that I would also echo the comments he made about the work our emergency services do day in and day out to keep us safe. And I think everybody across this House recognises that, and we are all grateful to them for the dedication that they show. Yes, my right honourable friend, the Brexit Secretary, and I agree that we want to publish a white paper that goes beyond the speeches, that goes beyond the speeches and the papers that have been given and published so far, that does go into more details, and that ensures that when we publish that white paper, we are able to negotiate with our European Union and European Commission colleagues on the basis that this is an ambitious offer from the United Kingdom for an ambitious trade deal and security partnership in the future.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, the question was...
Just so we're clear, she said, "Want? Are you going to publish this white paper?" Essentially, in the beginning of the negotiation, this was several months ago, the European Union comes up and says, "All right, just to roll back. Britain decides it wants to leave. There are certain problems with Britain leaving the EU. One is Northern Ireland. The other one is the single market. Britain wants to be able to have access to the single market. They have been integrated at this point, and so pulling Britain out of it, if it leaves the single market, you're going to have a lot of businesses that are going to be hurt and adversely affected by it. And it is a pipe dream to believe that you're going to make up that trade relationship with the United States or somewhere else." Northern Ireland. All right, so Northern Ireland, where Britain and the Republic of Ireland had a war. They've been in conflict for for a very long time. The Good Friday Agreement was the thing that essentially settled hostilities and balanced out the relationship between those two countries. The Republic of Ireland is part of the EU. Britain and Northern Ireland is not. Well, that means that you're probably going to end up with a hard border. They've been trying to stay away from the hard border like nobody's business. And they've been fighting tooth and nail to not have that hard border. But they have no idea how to make that work. Meaning just saying we're not going to have a hard border here is not the same thing as figuring out how the hell are we going to have this without a hard border. So they have certain ideas. Now the thing is, the EU proposed its idea. The EU's idea is for all intents and purposes to annex Northern Ireland. Look, why don't we just keep it in the EU? And then the people were like, what? They're talking about taking Northern Ireland from us. Well, when you think about it, it's somewhat of a simplistic solution. The problem is no one is ever going to go for it in Britain. Britain is not going to allow them to take away Northern Ireland from them. But if you're talking about a simplistic solution to the problem, where the Republic of Ireland absorbs Northern Ireland, and you essentially just make one Ireland, well, you have no issue anymore. Britain is Britain. No country is ever going to give up territory in that way. So they're trying to find one way after the next to make that work. The single market thing is a whole separate issue. For the time being, we want to talk about this one. A report was published recently saying that there were going to be food shortages, there were going to be medicine shortages, and gas shortages within, of course, of a few weeks if Britain doesn't get a deal. Now, people have kind of swiped this away, and the Brexiteers to say, "Oh, you guys are naysayers. They're trying to come up with the apocalypse, and they're going to be zombies. Trying to play this down." Yes, some of the people might have been more hyperbolic, and yes, this may be the Remainers' kind of fear mongering. But let's be honest, some of this does look bad, and it seems that the Theresa May government is in utter shambles. What I mean by this is there is a split in the Theresa May government. The Brexiteers and the people who are a little bit more soft in the way they want to go about their Brexit. The Brexiteers want a clean break. The others, not so much. Theresa May has been kind of more so, it seems like, on the side of somewhat of a customs union type arrangement that the Brexiteers hate because they think it's her trying to backstop into staying in the European Union. The white paper that Germany, and I know there's a lot of wood to chop, but this is what I'm getting to it. The white paper that Jeremy Corbyn is talking about is the EU gave its plan, and they call this thing a backstop, meaning that if we can't come up with an agreement, what are we going to do? The backstop being, well, we're going to default to essentially European rules. You set a backstop that if you couldn't come up with an agreement in regards to how we're going to part ways, that we're just going to default to your rules. That is what the government has set up. That was set up prior. In this particular case, the European Union is made its pitch. We take Ireland. Theresa May needs to give hers. And the issue here that Jeremy Corbyn is talking about is, what are you going to do? What is your plan for a backstop? What is your arrangement? How are you going to solve this particular issue? He's making this point that they can't come up with a way to solve this because the Brexiteers and the Remainers who are in Theresa May government can't necessarily come to an agreement. And they don't necessarily like this idea of remaining in a certain customs union because they think it's Theresa May kind of not living up to her expectations, or not living up to this idea of Brexit. There's more to this. Let's let Corbyn keep going. I'm trying to go through it relatively quickly because I'm merging several stories into one.
It's a very simple one, actually. It was, when will this white paper be published? Because next week we'll be debating the most important piece of legislation for a very long time, and we still have not seen the government's negotiating position. So can the Prime Minister at least assure the House that not only will the white paper be published ahead of the crucial June EU summit, but also there will be an opportunity to debate it in this House ahead of the summit?
The Right Honourable Gentleman talks about the vote that is going to take place in this House next week in the EU withdrawal bill. And indeed, those votes will be important. They will be important to show our commitment to do what the British people have asked us to do, which is to leave the European Union. And if he's talking about clarity and ahead of those votes, perhaps the Right Honourable Gentleman would take this opportunity of doing what he refused to do when I asked him last time in Prime Minister's questions, which is to stand up.
Order! Mr. Yassin, calm yourself. You're normally a model of calm and repose. Relax, there's a long way to go. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Perhaps the Right Honourable Gentleman would like to take the opportunity of doing what he refused to do 2 or 3 weeks ago in this chamber, which is to stand up and rule out a second referendum.
There are certain problems here that's taking place. Jeremy Corbyn asked her a question. He asked her a question. He asked her a question the first time around. Do you have a white paper? Do you have something that we can see, all of us see, before we debate this issue? Because I gotta be honest, it comes across as if the UK government is not doing squat, that these negotiations are not necessarily going anywhere, and that this issue for an answer from the standpoint of Northern Ireland has no answer, at least not up to this point, because they can't come to some decision on this. Now, they have finally, a day after that, come to some decision that we'll talk about after they finish this conversation. But she's obfuscating and she's dodging and she's trying to hit him in order to not answer the question that Jeremy Corbyn asks. Will you have a paper for us to look at outlining your plans that you're going to present to the EU before actually going to the EU? Before actually debating this. Her answer, we would hope to do this, or we wish to do this. So it was like, yeah, we understand that you wish to do it, but will you do it? Then the very next answers after this is her essentially going after Corbyn. PMQs, Prime Minister questions, and she's asking him questions to avoid answering his question. Let's keep going, because Jeremy Corbyn is not the only one that noticed that it doesn't seem like you guys have made any progress on this. Part of the reason they're not making progress is because there is a division in the government. And fact is, if Theresa May takes certain options, the DUP will drop their support. And if the DUP drops their support, Theresa May government implodes. These are high stakes. she may lose her prime ministership if things go a particular way. Jeremy Corbyn keeps saying he's a government in waiting. Let's let him keep going.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Mr. Speaker, the last time I looked at the order paper, it said Prime Minister's question time. And we were told, Mr. Speaker, 3 weeks ago, to a great deal of fanfare, that this document, this white paper, would set out the government's ambition for the UK's future relationship with the EU and their vision for a future role in the world. It's nowhere to be seen. No answer is there as to when it will be published. 4 weeks ago, the Prime Minister did confirm that the Cabinet was looking at 2 options for a future customs arrangement with the EU, a customs partnership model and a maximum facilitation option. Can the Prime Minister now tell us which of her subcommittees has met, what decisions they've made, when they're going to report to the Cabinet, and will we be told about it?
All right, now we're up to date. So this is the thing that's taking place now, today. One of the main people in her cabinet, a guy named David Davis, Brexiteer, had threatened to leave. If Davis threatens to leave, everything that I've read up to this point has said if he threatens to leave, that she would literally lose a ton of power from the standpoint of Brexiteers not believing that she's serious about Brexit. This is fucking fascinating. She has elements in her government, per se, that are hard Brexiteers. She seems to be somewhat on the fence of this, or, and what I think is looking at this saying, the hard Brexiteers are causing problems for me because I can't necessarily do what they want me to do. What I mean by that is, what he's asking her, the custom partnership or the other one, he's asking this question because he knows that she doesn't have an answer to this question. She can't have an answer to this question because if she goes one route, the hard Brexiteers are going to balk and hit her in the knees, and if she goes the other route, same difference. Maximum facilitation doesn't exist. That's a fairy tale. That's them talking about magic in order to essentially attract goods and services coming in and out of the country. I'm being hyperbolic. It's essentially a model that would try to think of it as a soft border. That allow goods and services to kind of go flow in and out the country in a way that doesn't necessarily need to create interruptions at point of contact, meaning when it comes in and out of Northern Ireland. The technology doesn't exist. And even at the best estimate, would not necessarily be done by the time Brexit is finished. The other model, the customs arrangement model, Boris Johnson called that model, what do you call it, stupid, or something to that effect, or called it crazy. That's what he called it, crazy, with this idea of accepting tariffs from other countries. Right now, Britain is in a customs union and Britain is in a single market. Being in a single market, all of the, you could say, the rule set that they're running with essentially are under the EU, and the court rulings by the ECJ, Britain is held to those things. The customs union is something different. The customs union is essentially all trade deals, or all of them have the same tariffs and quotas and those type of things. And at the end of the day, no trade deals, meaning those countries cannot necessarily make trade deals because all of them are looked at as somewhat of a single unit from the standpoint of trade deals. Britain wants to leave both of those. The customs arrangement would essentially have Britain collect tariffs. It's kind of weird, but Britain would collect tariffs on things coming into the country. If those things are staying in the EU or staying within the UK, Britain... Actually, let me just read it. If those things are staying in the UK, Britain will pay the difference. And I know that sounds a little weird. Let me let Jeremy Corbyn finish first, and then I'll show an explanation of customs by itself.
Prime Minister!
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman that we have already set out our ambition for our future relationship with the European Union, but crucially, what we are doing as a government is delivering on the vote of the British people, which is to leave the European Union. And I know that the right honourable gentleman, I didn't ask him a question I simply suggested that he could stand up and say what the Labour Party policy was on a second referendum. And if he wants to enter this debate next week in the right spirit, then he will do just that and rule out a second referendum.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Theresa May is... They're playing politics to some degree. Jeremy Corbyn is hitting her on this because he knows that this is the biggest division within her cabinet. Davis was about to leave, meaning he was literally about to balk because Theresa May was about to have a backstop without a limit on it. What I mean is the backstop being, if we can't find a solution to our issues for Brexit, then we will default to the rules essentially that we've always stayed with. Now, they hate this idea because ultimately Britain will be held to the rules of the ECJ court, but wouldn't necessarily have any influence in making those rules. That seems like a worst case scenario. That being said, she put a time limit on the backstop. Something that the EU has said that they would not necessarily agree with. This is a clusterfuck. She put the time limit on the backstop purely to please the Brexiteers. This is a clusterfuck. Now, she's hitting Jeremy Corbyn on this because there are certain people in the Labour Party that are pushing for a second referendum. They're pushing hard for a second referendum. George Soros has started putting a bunch of money into the UK in order to try to foment this thing of trying to get a second referendum, a second vote. So her hitting him and chiding him, not to mention you have people like Tony Blair and some of these guys who are pushing for a second referendum. She knows that this is somewhat of a sore spot and that there are going to be people in the country that would hate this idea of Labour having this level of support for a second referendum. And if they can use that for political exploitation, she's going to use it to politically exploit it. At the same token, this is Prime Minister questions. And she is doing her damnedest to avoid dealing with the fact that they are in shambles and that she does not have a clear idea on what she's going to talk about and present to the EU. Let's keep going. Or the very least that the EU is going to accept.
Speaker, it's not the opposition that are conducting the negotiations. But very sadly, Mr. Speaker, it's not the government either. Last week, the Brexit Secretary put forward yet another new plan, including a 10-mile buffer zone in Northern Ireland. Is that now the government's option?
Prime Minister!
To the right honourable gentleman. We are looking at a number of, we're looking at the two options for the customs model. Both of those will do what we have committed to do, which is to ensure that we deliver no hard border in Northern Ireland, and we have been very clear in the December joint report about what that means. It also means that we ensure that there is no border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, no border down the Irish Sea as the European Union proposed, and that is why we are putting forward alternative proposals to the European Union in relation to that issue, and we continue to negotiate with the European Union on all of the issues that need to be addressed before we actually bring legislation before this House for withdrawal agreement and implementation bill. And I say to the right honourable gentleman, that when we look at what is going to be the important debate that will take place in this House next week, because it is an important debate that will show the sincerity of this House to deliver on the vote of the British people to leave the European Union.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Mr. Speaker, we've had no answer on the White Paper, and I don't think we've had an answer on the buffer zone, but I could say the one thing the buffer zone proposal has achieved is bringing just about everybody in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland together, and it was described by the Irish Chamber of Commerce, who said the idea is bonkers. So can the Prime Minister confirm that it remains her plan to leave the European Union in March 2019 and complete the transition by December 2020?
Prime Minister?
Yes.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Now she's saying that, and that's somewhat political gamesmanship, but again, her cabinet is in shambles. This is theater. This is theater. I'm going to read to you the fury and the fights that these guys were having in the background, saying that they were having this tense conversation on this idea of what they were going to do for Brexit. They still don't necessarily know the route they're going to take next year. They're talking about next year. They're supposed to have something in this complicated deal done by next year. And it doesn't seem like the Prime Minister has done anything at all. This government is in utter shambles. Just keep going.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I look at the faces behind her and they're not all of one on this matter. The Right Honourable Member for Ashford doesn't share her certainty. He said there will be a transition period that will follow her implementation period. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to Brexit, this government has delivered more delays and more cancellations than Northern Rail. The government's white paper is delayed, its customs proposals have been cancelled, and it's ripped up its own timetable, just like our shambolic privatised railways. This government's incompetence threatens our economy, businesses, jobs, and our communities. So my question to the Prime Minister is this: which will last longer, the Northern Rail franchise or her premiership?
Prime Minister!
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman that if he's not willing to stand up in this House and talk about the Labour Party policy on Europe, we actually learned a little today from the shadow Brexit secretary about the Labour Party's policy on Europe, where he made clear that it was a pretence. And I quote, a pretence that somehow everybody in the Labour Party is in the same place on this. So now we know what the right honourable gentleman is. Labour voted for a referendum. They voted to trigger Article 50. And since then, they have tried to frustrate the Brexit process at every stage. Their MEPs voted against moving on to negotiate the trade discussions. They voted against the withdrawal bill. Today we saw again they are refusing to rule out a second referendum. The British people voted to leave the European Union, and it is this government that is delivering on the vote of the British people.
I love PMQs. I absolutely love PMQs. To get a little bit more reality to what's taking place, this is, what is this? BBC. Oh God, BBC. All right. Reality check. What do Brexit backstop proposals mean? Because that's what they're talking about. This kind of one of the key things that has been taking place over the last few days, especially this morning, has to do with the backstop, and part of the reason why the guy was essentially about to leave the government, in which case it would have hurt Theresa May severely. The UK published a paper setting out its backstop proposals for customs arrangement with the EU if a new permanent deal is ready in time. The UK said it couldn't accept EU's initial proposal for a backstop because it would apply to Northern Ireland only and, in effect, create a customs border between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK, and that would be unacceptable for, among others, Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party, whose support Theresa May relies on, and the Commons. Essentially, if she did that, meaning the most simplest of solutions would to be allow Northern Ireland to stay within the customs union. Yes, that's for all intents and purposes having an annexation of Northern Ireland to the Republic of Ireland. But if you did that, this goes away. This issue goes away. However, you can't do that because the DUP would immediately leave Theresa May's government. Her government would utterly collapse on the spot because she can't necessarily have a government on her own. The Tories don't have enough votes. So to some degree, you have a tail wagging the dog. This is a weak prime ministership, and she is doing everything she can to hold this together. and she is barely keeping it together. So the UK has said temporary customs arrangement should apply to the UK as a whole, keeping the entire country in a customs union with the EU for a limited time period after the end of the proposal Brexit transition period in December 2020. If we don't find an arrangement, we'll just kind of stay the way it is. We'll keep it as a limited thing. It would involve the elimination of tariffs, quotas, rules of origins, and customs processing, including declarations on all UK-EU trade. Essentially, if we don't find a deal, we just keep the same rules. That's effectively what it boils down to. But emphasizing that it's temporary. In order to encourage supporters for Brexit to accept the proposal, the government emphasizes that the UK would be able to apply and sign and ratify trade agreements with the rest of the world during the temporary customs arrangement. But it would only be able to implement those elements that do not affect the way those arrangements work, which means, in effect, the agreements on services, because all trade goods will be part of the extended customs union. Britain would still be held liable to the ECJ, meaning the court itself, and any new trade deals that take place. But it would not have any influence on those laws because it would not necessarily be part of the EU in that way. It would just be held to the laws during the transitional period. Part of the reason that the Brexiteers are against that is because it makes it look like you're staying in the EU. For all intents and purposes, you're staying in the EU. They think it's their way of kind of slow footing and not necessarily giving the people what they want is Brexit. That's why they tend to be against this. Now, the other people look at it and say, we need to have a rational policy of leaving because if we try to do this in a somewhat of a haphazard way, you're going to hurt the businesses and hurt this country. That's the war. That's the split. And that's the thing that they've been bumping heads on within the administration itself. Not to mention you have Northern Ireland Party, the DUP, that's essentially saying, if you hand us over, we will leave you. I don't know how she's going to solve this. Let's fast forward to this one. So, let me see, David's urging not to resign. I went over that one. This is the guy who is, I don't want to say flipping out, but if he leaves, she would lose a lot of credibility from the standpoint of the Brexiteers. And I want to explain the customs union. All right. This is a short animation that explains customs union in a pretty clear way. I mean, ultimately, I think I explained it pretty decent. You have this, all of the countries that are part of that particular customs union essentially organize their trade regulations to be somewhat the same. That way they can trade goods and services back and forth between the countries. Any country that tries to trade with them, however, in trade deals or something to that effect, has to affect them as if they're dealing with the whole. Meaning all of the rules of the EU that are in the customs union, for the most part, function as the same in regards to trade deals. Meaning you wouldn't be able to go to one country and get somewhat of a better deal from another country. The tariffs, quotas, and all those things, for the most part, apply equally over the entirety of the country. You deal with the EU as a whole. You don't deal with the individual nations that are a part of it, if that makes sense. Let's take a look at the thing, anyway, just to nail it in so you know what they're talking about.
Here are 5 steps to understanding the EU customs union. Number 1. It's the biggest customs union in the world. A customs union is a trade agreement between countries. That means no customs duties, no quotas or declarations as goods move around the member states. They collectively agree on trade deals with countries outside the union. Now, the customs union is different to the single market, which is a broader agreement to accept free movement of services, capital and people, as well as goods. Number 2. The trade between member states in the EU customs union is as frictionless as possible. For instance, car manufacturers can import parts quickly from countries within the EU without fees and paperwork. Outside the EU customs union, businesses could face extra fees and border checks. So, when the UK leaves it, it could slow the arrival of parts to the UK and delay production. Some say this could force firms to quit the UK, causing job losses. It could also make the price of goods more expensive if companies importing goods have to pay more duty. Others say new trade deals with new partners around the world would mean more service jobs in textiles, banking and design, and cheaper prices of goods. Number 3. The UK won't be the first European country that is outside the EU.
Alright, I'm going to stop that part. Stop it there. And one last part to this that's important. This thing of trade is so... If Britain, like I said, 2 problems. Access to the single market and... What's the other one? Access to the single market and Northern Ireland. Access to the single market is just as much of a problem as the Northern Ireland issue. If Britain believes that it's going to get a deal where it's going to be able to get access to the single market without essentially following the rules of that single market, I think Britain has another thing coming. The EU has taken the position that this is not a la carte. You can't pick and choose among the rules that you want to follow from the single market. There are certain rules and regulations that you have to follow. Meaning, if we say we're not going to accept non-GMO foods, well, we're not going to accept those particular products in our country. If you're trying to trade with us, you're going to have to amend your laws to our rules. That's their position. That's always been their position. Whatever Britain's position is going to take, Britain is going to have to somehow get the EU to deviate from that very specific position. And the EU has no reason to do that, seeing it is probably going to try to punish Britain for leaving the EU in the first place. Just saying, I don't know how Britain is going to square that circle, but we will see. There are major politics that are taking place in the European Union right now, or in the EU. This is one of those places, and this is absolutely fascinating what's taking place. One last article on this. Somebody from the EU, an EU diplomat, got word of what Theresa May wanted to do and responded to it. Their response was awesome. So it's a joke. Theresa May's latest time-limited Brexit fudge torn apart by Brussels. Theresa May's latest attempt to fudge the Irish border backstop has been ridiculed by several of the European Union's remaining 27 members, one of whom branded it a joke. After a series of tussles between Prime Minister and Brexit Secretary David Davis, Britain was able to publish a new backstop with an aspirational time limit in order to keep the Brexiteers happy. Mrs. May was originally plotting to send her EU Sherpa, Orly Robbins, to Brussels with an open-ended backstop proposal, but amid rumors of Mr. David planning to resign, the Prime Minister agreed to work in a potential end date for the backstop. All of this took place a day after that Prime Minister questions that you saw between the two, where Jeremy Corbyn kept asking her, "Where's your white paper? Where's 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 your white paper? Are you going to show us a white paper? Are you going to show us a white paper? We're going to have to debate this. Are you going to show us anything? Are you going to show us anything? What have you been doing? What have you been doing?" Just saying. The Westminster document said the UK is clear that the temporary customs arrangement, should it be needed, should be time limited, and that it will only be in place until the future custom arrangement can be induced. The UK expects the future arrangement to be in place by the end of September 2021 at the latest. There's a range of options for how a time limit could be delivered, which the UK will propose and discuss with the EU. She still doesn't know. She still doesn't know. The EU official, having warned that a time-limited backstop will be unacceptable, diplomats from the EU 27 have joined the debate. One diplomat revealed the publication was somewhat of a joke and a fudge designed to please Brexiteers in the Brexit cabinet meeting, Prime Minister's cabinet. They said, "It's a joke. Yes, it's a fudge that satisfies their cabinet, but it's a fudge that's practically irrelevant to reality." They've agreed to a backstop for Ireland in December. What actually have they been doing since then? What happens in 2021 when the future arrangement isn't ready? Which is a good point. I remember doing this story all the way back, like they say in December, where this backstop issue came up and people's heads exploded. There was like a backstop. You're going to force us to stay with the European Union rules? I mean, we said Brexit. Brexit meant Brexit. We're supposed to be getting out of here. We're supposed to be leaving. What do you mean backstop? I distinctly remember the Brexiteers freaking out over the backstop issue. They're still talking about a backstop. What have you been doing? What have you been doing all this time? Jesus Christ. Right here. Here's another one. Another EU diplomat questioned whether Brussels should even accept British offer because they already made a broad compromise by agreeing to a transition period. They accused the UK of backtracking towards the EU's initial proposal of a backstop from March. The diplomat said, "We gave the UK a transition and a broad compromise to agree on the other issues in December and March, including Northern Ireland. Since then, we've now been negotiating, but still the only thing we get from the UK is almost backtracking version of our difficult Northern Irish compromise back in December and March, without the UK moving any of the difficult issues forward as far as I can see." This is just a newsflash. It's just a newsflash. This one, I know this one is very long. I had like 3 of them that I thought all of them kind of fit together. They're falling apart. They're falling apart. So we will see. This is fascinating to watch. I gotta be honest. When I was first listening to the European Union have this conversation about during the debate, and they brought up this thing of annexing Northern Ireland, they said it in a different way. They said it in these kind of flowery words and these technical terms, and I was like, wait a minute, it sounds like he's talking about taking Northern Ireland. And then I heard other people flip out like, what? You're talking about taking Northern Ireland? And I was like, okay, fair enough. Allowing Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland to come together, that's if they wanted to, would be a simpler compromise. It would be far simpler. They're talking about all these new border ideas and all this other stuff, creating new technology. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Who's here? But it's Brexit. See, it says Brexit at the top of the stage. When you sign your GDP when you sign your GDP over to the EU. Well, the way it's going, it sounds like Britain is going to be a part of the EU for a while going forward, even if they want to leave. Ireland is a rogue state anyway, a tax haven and corporate scam magnet full of scab labor. It do well feasting on the corpses of other economies. Fuck Ireland. What Bob is bitterly talking about here is Northern Ireland, for the most part, has dropped their taxes, allowing other companies to essentially come there. So let's say a company like Google could set up shop there and pretend as if their main business is there, so they can essentially use Ireland tax rate while operating in other parts of the world. They're tax haven. They're essentially just kind of they're tax haven. There's no other way to call it. Let's see. You did say ban all trade. Okay, I don't know what that one was about. In fact, they hurt by immigration policies. Okay, go back and forth. Don't think all the Germans are benefiting. My middle class family in Germany lost jobs, have no opportunity, and hurting. Okay, you guys are talking about Germany. Merkel is the worst. You know, Angela Merkel almost lost her seat over this stuff, especially the immigration issue. She almost lost her seat. It's weird. Conservative government, and yet you couldn't tell it from, if you compare it to America. Not so much. All right. I'm going to end this because I have several that I want to get to before Abby Martin gets here. And I need to do a little bit more research before Abby gets here. So I'm not going to keep this one too long. Panda Stratton, good interview with Jimmy Dore. Awesome. Good job. Ah, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Super chat you missed. I didn't see one. I don't have any super chats here. Vegan for the Planet, super chat you missed. No, really. There are none. Did I miss one? I mean, I don't see it. Unless you're talking about on the other video. Yeah, Vegan for the Planet. There aren't any on this video. Not sure what you mean on this woman, man. Alright. Tunit said he did from Jimmy Dore. Oh, from the Jimmy Dore video. Yeah, I couldn't see them. Like, I couldn't see them in the queue. I couldn't see them in the queue. No, you can't undo Brexit or elevate Hillary to the White House either. I don't think you should undo Brexit. Jamal, please get the difference between Ireland and no correct, please. What do you mean get the difference between Ireland? I don't know what that means. Yeah, I don't know what that means. I mean, there's a Northern Ireland and there's a Republic of Ireland. I don't know what you mean get the difference between them. Get the difference between Ireland. Yeah, I don't understand what you're saying 2 times. Yeah, I don't understand what you're saying. Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland associated with Britain. Republic of Ireland is its own thing. They're talking about annexing it. Yeah, I know what you mean. How can people vote for Bernie after the DNC cheated him? Oh God. Oh God. Let's not go for Bernie on that one. All right, I'm going to end this here. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the Patreon. Guys, if I missed your super chats in, I guess I can find them. I can read them through the Abby one. I might be able to pull that one off. Yeah, I might be able to pull that one off. England dump Northern Ireland. Wow, you guys are saying dump Northern Ireland. Give Northern Ireland the same status as Gibraltar could work. I guess my thing is Britain going to be willing to give that up? And I suspect not. If JT missed it, it was on purpose. What the hell? What the hell ever? No, dude. When I'm doing the live video, I can't see the chats per se. I don't have omniscient. I'm not omniscient. That's like saying, how could someone support MLK because white supremacists hated him? X Factor. Jamal, thanks for being a new junkie, man. Oh, I know, right? I love this stuff. All right, I'm going to end it here. I'll see you guys in a few. I have a few videos that I want to get to before Abby. So, thanks, guys. Bye-bye.